Hello, welcome to Citizens for Global Solutions Minnesota. I'm Katia, the president of CGS Minnesota, and we'll be moderating this event. Citizens for Global Solutions Minnesota is a nonprofit organization based in the state of Minnesota in the United States. Every month, we host one of our online projects. Today, it's time for our global films discussion, and our guest speaker will be discussing the documentary, Period, End of Sentence. This event is free and open to anyone. If you want to learn more about CGS Minnesota work, please visit our website at www.globalsolutionsmn.org and follow us on our social media. We are present at LinkedIn, Instagram, X, YouTube, and Facebook pages. Well, in both the United States and India, 1 in 4 teens, particularly those from lower income households and communities of color, and 1 in 3 adults struggle to afford or lack access to clean menstrual products. You'll be able to watch the documentary Period, End of Sentence on Netflix and YouTube channel, and we will be talking about that today. Our guest speaker, Aashraya Seth, is a Fulbright Humphrey Fellow at the University of Minnesota Humphrey School of Public Affairs. He is currently serving as a policy specialist at the Minnesota Senate. He's a member of the Minnesota Menstrual Equity Coalition, a he for she fellow with United Nations Women, and the founder of Impact 91 and Happy Periods, national nonprofits focused on menstrual equity, girls' education, and gender justice. His work has been featured as case studies on the Global South by organizations including United Nations Women, the Gates Foundation, and the Swedish government. He studied physics and information systems before earning his first public policy fellowship at Churchill College, University of Cambridge. He later held fellowships at the University of Chicago, Harris School of Public Policy, the Korean Development Institute, the United Nations, and the HSF Germany. Over the past decade, Aashraya has advised and managed programs for the British, Indian, and Australian government in science, technology, space, education, and gender equity. Contributed to high-level policy dialogues at the United Nations and the World Economic Forum, and was recently among the top 80 social innovators in India and the top 50 emerging policy leaders globally. Aashraya Seth, welcome to CGS Minnesota. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Katya. I think it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for bringing me here. We will be looking some excerpts of a fabulous documentary, which is an Academy Award-winning documentary. I really hope some of you must have watched it before. I think it just gives a good context. But yeah, as Katya mentioned, I'm Aashraya. I'm based out of currently in Minnesota. I'm finishing my term, like 10 months here, in the next 1 week or so. Before I head back to India, I've been doing a lot of work on menstrual equity and reproductive rights for close to a decade now. Have been working mostly in the global south, but I think for the past 10 months, I've been doing a lot of work in Minnesota and across the US in this space. I'll share my screen now, and hoping it's visible to everybody. Katya, are you able to see us? Okay, brilliant. So thank you very much for being here. I hope you're able to see the screen. Yep. So I think the idea here is we'll be reflecting on a story that actually, kind of stays only for 26 minutes long on the screen, but holds actually the centuries of silence, stigma, strength, and social change between its frames. I'm talking about the Academy Award-winning documentary Period, the End of Sentence, a really powerful and compact film that brings to light an often hidden issue in the shadows, which is menstruation. But more than just a biological fact of menstruation, this film shows us what happens when a silence is broken, when women are empowered, and when innovation meets purpose. And just before kind of we get into the looking, kind of looking at the excerpts of the movie, I really want to set the stage about the movie where the movie was set in Kathikera, which is like a small town and village right outside Delhi, India. Delhi is the capital of India. It won an academies in 2019. Features the PAT project, which was actually kind of born out of the movement that started, which I'll talk about later. It was directed by Raika. So the movie actually follows a group of women who begin manufacturing low-cost sanitary pads using a machine developed by social entrepreneur Arunachalam Muruganantham, also known as the Pad Man of India. I think there's a beautiful Bollywood movie by the Indian cinema that is called Pad Man. One must look at it. It's again the story of how Arunachalam built India's most affordable sanitary pad making machine in India. But what the film truly documents, it's not just the production of pads, it is the production of dignity, of confidence, of economic independence. And it is the story of how menstruation, something really and entirely natural, it becomes a site of shame, how women and their allies are transforming that shame into strength. Just looking at the numbers on the screen, you know, we could see that 500 million plus women and people who menstruate lack access to menstrual products. The stigma is global. It's still a taboo in many cultures. So if you watch the movie or if you watch it, it's available for free on YouTube, but it's available on Netflix as well. Um, I think one of the most striking aspects of the documentary is the sheer absence of language um, around menstruation. In one of the scenes, filmmakers ask local men what a period is, and the answers would range from confusion to kind of misinformation, and some say it's a disease, others, very awkwardly just shrug it. And even many women hesitate to speak about even the word out loud. And this is not just in Kathikera, the village where this movie was shot, but the silence around menstruation is global. I mean, I'm living in the US. I can see that there are a lot of communities who are just not able to talk about it openly. But in many countries, including India, menstruation is related as something dirty, shameful, or dangerous. And girls are told not to enter kitchens or temples. And there are a lot of these stereotypes that comes along with, as part of this particular biological process. Some are banned from school or forced to hide at homes. And the shame becomes internalized. And now think what happens when something as routine as your monthly cycle becomes a source of secrecy. So it kind of isn't just about access to sanitary products. It's about the denial of dignity, the denial of conversation, and the denial of education and participation. So maybe just reflect and ask yourselves while you're watching the movie, where do these silences, kind of exist in our own societies, in our schools, our homes, our workplace? Just look around you because as the statistic says, it's 1 in 4, 1 in 5 people who don't have access to clean period products. Um, I think one of the other things was Arunachalam, man, how it all started. It's a very interesting point where he saw his, wife using rags, dirty clothes instead of having access to clean period product. Got into this, got into this point where he was like, I really don't want my wife to use a particular dirty product or a cloth. And he then goes on to building one of the most affordable sanitary pad making machines. And the other part of, if you look at the picture on the left, what actually makes this documentary hopeful, what makes it inspiring is how quickly the narrative shifts from stigma to strength. And the women in Kathikera are introduced to a machine that produces affordable, biodegradable sanitary pads. But more importantly, they are trained to use it, manage it, and build a business from it. So it's not about, somebody coming in and leading that information or, the product or that supply chain, but they're building the capacity of women who will be leading it. So this isn't charity, it's kind of empowerment. And then they create a brand called FLY. And what a perfect, metaphor where these women begin to fly, which you can relate to socially, economically, and emotionally. Um, one of the most powerful lines in the film comes from one of the women who says, "I never thought I could leave the house without asking permission, and now I go to schools and shops to sell our pads." So this is actually, what empowerment looks like when women earn, they are heard, when they kind of lead, they are seen, and when they own their voices, communities begin to shift. And this is actually a very, very important, point in the film where this is one of the first times where these women have really felt empowered. They go out, they are building their confidence, they are developing their communication skills by selling these pads. But also there's a sense of ownership that this is something that they have leading and they have developed as part of the work. Um, I think period poverty um, is very intersectional to education, where we've seen that girls are missing out or dropping out of school at menarche, which is when they start their menstrual cycle, which is now as early as at the age of 9 or at the age of 10. And so many schools lack access to toilets, pads, or, basic, products or even privacy. Um, and when you look at the point when the movie won the Academy, you would see that the director's acceptance speech. They said a period should end a sentence and not a girl's education. And we've seen there's so many statistics where globally millions of girls miss school during their period and due to lack of access to products, bathrooms, or like supportive environments. And many entirely drop out, as I mentioned. And in rural areas, it's actually one of the top contributors to the gender gap in education. And what the film shows us without being kind of, preachy, is that solving the menstrual inequity, it isn't just about health, it's kind of about justice. It's about equal access to opportunities. And education, as we know, it's a very powerful lever for change. And so if, girls are being pushed out of school because of something as natural as their menstrual cycle, I think we are not just failing them, we are kind of failing as a society. Um, this is a visual of the girls' community who basically were based out of a school in Oakwood, in Los Angeles, and they basically fundraised for the machines, which were then installed in the Katikera village, and that's how the PAD project was born, and they all led the movement, and that actually, got them to a point where they recorded all this and, won an academy. Um, I think here the really important point again here is the local innovation and how the role of grassroots change. It's actually a very beautiful thread in the story where you'll see that the change doesn't always come from the top. The pad making machine used in the film wasn't, something invented by a multinational company. It was created by Arunachalam, a school dropout in southern part of India, and who saw his wife using rags and decided to do something about it. And this is important where we see innovation doesn't need to be like flashy, it doesn't need to be like branded, it needs to be relevant. And how local ownership, is what makes the bad making initiative in this film sustainable. And when solutions are community led, when they take into account the local realities and empower people to run with them, they stick. And specifically in this context in Kartikera, where we look at the machine is not just a machine, it's actually a portal to or a gateway to health, confidence, and mobility is what we've seen. There is a very interesting point where we've always talked about how do we engage men and boys in the conversation of gender equity, and this is that point in the movie where you'll see a lot of men, boys being asked about periods, sanitary products, and they are really uncomfortable while talking about it. And that's actually one of the quiet revolutions kind of in the movie is how the initiative also begins to shift how men see this particular issue. And at first, you'll see in the movie where many male relatives are confused or even resistant, and I showed in the initial slide. But as women's kind of work grows, you see a subtle change where some men become curious, others become supportive. So this man, there was a machine that was installed in his house. And when he was asked about what do you think what's happening in your house, he was like, oh, it's probably, there's a machine that is being set up. And then they ask about what machine do you think it is? So he's like, probably there's a diaper making machine. And he actually knew about it, what's being done, but he was not, comfortable, to talk about those things. So I think that's something which is again like very, very crucial. So we could see that menstrual equity is not just a women's issue, it's actually a human issue where whether it's, fathers, brothers, teachers, or policymakers, men must be part of some of these of all these conversations, and they should be at the heart of the conversations. And if kind of if stigma is taught, then empathy must be taught too. And we must raise a generation of boys who are not ashamed of periods but allies in this particular movement. So there's several key moments in the film which I have kind of talked about. But really, how do I summarize this? Um, is there is this young girl who wants to become a police officer, but is from a very local village, but also just gets into this broader, conversation of breaking the stereotype, bringing in more women in the community on how they can train them, on making their own pads, setting up the machine. And then Arunachalam, who basically built the machine, and he also comes into this conversation, talks about why, this movement is important, how he actually started this important movement. And then you will hear from a lot of these women who are working at the grassroots, who've been making the pads, who've been selling the pads, and who are actually, having a conversation with the shopkeeper to see, how will they buy it, how much will they buy it, and how you'll see how it started in when they were unable to talk about some of those issues or even say the word, to by the end of the movie, which is just 26, you will be able to see through that movement, through that journey, how they are able to confidently talk about some of those things, how they are able to, uh, you know, confidently say that, okay, I'll be leading this change in my community. I'll be taking it from here and why this is so important. And they're able to talk about this with their partners, men around them. Um, So I think one of the other things is like it was last week when we had the Global Menstrual Hygiene Day, which was May 28. And there is this is an important day which has been celebrated for quite a couple of years now, and it's kind of led by Wash United in Germany, and they've been their hashtag was this year was period friendly world. How do we make sure that spaces around us, whether it's a public space, private space, educational space, they are period friendly? And when I say period friendly, it means it should have access to basic wash facilities. It should have toilets. It should have, sanitary products, menstrual products, biodegradable, sustainable, and nobody, should be restricted to have some of those, those products. The call to action here is actually when you look at the movie, you'll realize how it is a stark reality, which is right now. It's not like 20 years back, it's not like 30 years back. It's the same thing which is right now, and it's the same which is around the globe in most countries because we are talking about the 26% of 1.9 billion people. So there's a lot to of us to also do while we need to normalize these conversations. We need to include men and boys in these conversations and basically just support local initiatives. So you don't really need to support to a specific charity or donate your money to a specific charity, but find out who's working, what kind of nonprofits are working in this space in your city, community, county. Donate them, work with them, volunteer with them, give your hours, give your, if your access period products, donate it to them. When we say 1 in 5 people, it's 1 in 5 people is like just look around you. If you've got 10 people, you'll realize that okay, this is, five or one or two of these people don't have access to products. Yeah, thank you very much. I think I really hope you like the movie. If you've watched it before, great. If you've not watched it, please watch it. Please recommend it to your men and boys in the family, and also, just share the link. It's on Netflix, YouTube, as I mentioned. Um, yeah, thank you. I'm open to questions.
Thank you so very much. It's a wonderful presentation. The first time that I saw, and I got really emotional for so many reasons. So I think I will ask again. I know the answer because we have been talking, but I wanted you to ask, so you share with everybody, how did you start working with this topic and when?
Right. Yes, I think I get this question a lot of times, and mostly always when I'm having these conversations, um I think there were 2 points in my life when I realized that okay, this is the time when I really have to get into the space and do, disrupt the space with some local innovations. And being a physicist by degree, I'm a science person. It's important how we use science for good. But coming back to your question is I was too naive at around 10 or 11, when I was 10 or 11. The same stereotypes that I was talking about, the women in my family were following the similar stereotypes, not entering the kitchen, not going to the temples, and people in my family are religious. That particular problem always stayed with me. I was always curious that why this is happening. Like, why is my mom or my sister, not going to the temple? And our education curriculum doesn't necessarily teach us anything about all these stereotypes, taboos, or anything in general about menstrual health. There is just one small diagram about menstrual cycle. You learn about it, you just move on. And that's how K through 12 works. In most countries. And then when I started working with the government of India, I built a few edtech projects. I was working in the on a few edtech projects where I closely worked with the public health and public schools education system. That's when I realized, okay, this is not just a two people problem in my household. It's like a 23 million problem in India. This was back in 2015 when report came out. And it still kind of continues to be 1 in 4, 1 in 5, where people don't have access to period products. So it's not just two people, it's a 23 million across India, and now we see it's like 500 million plus across the globe, where it's not just the access to products, but it's about education. It's about it's about education, stigma, breaking the stigma, breaking those stereotypes. So yeah, I was like, okay, let's use science for good, and that's how I entered. I built one of the most affordable sanitary pad vending machines. Arunachalam built the making machine, so I'm different. We have our own menstrual cups. That is again like a sustainable period product. We have our own menstrual curriculum that we started in public schools. So yeah, it's a range of things that we do through Happy Periods, my organization that I founded 7 years back.
And you are now in the United States, but you have been able to manage from afar.
Yes, I have been able to. It's been deadly, but I have been able to. I've been up at night, receiving calls at 3 a.m., what's happening. But of course, I'm doing a lot of work here in the US on menstrual equity as well. I've been supporting the Menstrual Equity Coalition. I've been supporting grassroots movement on menstrual health. We had a huge event in Bemidji, Beltrami County, which is like 4 hours north from here from Minneapolis, where we had like a week-long event where Rep Sandra Feist, who was a co-author of the Menstrual Equity Bill for Minnesota, we spoke together on a panel. We showcased the movie again to the people there, and it was a pretty good time for celebration, but also it was kind of a stark reminder for us that every one of us have to do a lot of things, have to put in our efforts to end this.
Yes. Um, and since you arrived in the United States, um, what did you find about menstrual health and menstrual information here in the state of Minnesota? And perhaps if you know about the rest of the country, that would be a nice insight as well.
Right. I think from Minnesota, I arrived at a very important time which was at the onset of the elections in the US. I came in August. Elections were due in November, October, November. What I have seen, only I'm talking about Minnesota right now, where in 2023, I think this goes back in 2021, where a few school students here, in Minnesota, Twin Cities, they found that this is a big problem, and they took that problem to their local legislature. The legislator took that on notice in 2022, but that wasn't the budget year, so they didn't manage to put funding to it. But in 2023, they were able to put funds to it. So Rep. Sandra Feist, who I was talking about, she co-authored the bill, put that in the Senate, and got that passed. Governor Walz signed the bill to ensure that every education, public school or a university, higher education, has access to free tampons, period products in all washrooms. Um, so that was, I think, a very important movement where in 2024 earlier, they received all the schools, higher education institutions received their first tranche of money to ensure that, every school is receiving the money. They're ensuring that period products are there available in the school. But then I've been working with the Equity Coalition on ensuring that, okay, there is so the money is gone, products are being received. We need to see, the monitoring and evaluation process. How, if the money is gone, are students receiving the products? Are products there in the washrooms or not? What kind of education is given? Because education is not part of the bill. So there is still some lack of education on menstrual equity in schools across Minnesota. So I think that's something we are working on. I've been advising to menstrual equity coalition members who've been leading this work on developing like a menstrual equity toolkit for Minnesota that will come out probably in like 10 days time and released for all the public schools that'll have like a go-to guide like a 101 on menstrual health or menstrual equity in Minnesota for all the schools. Yeah, and we'll also have like a menstrual equity, like a monitoring and evaluation framework on how do we kind of map all these things. So Minnesota has been kind of really progressive in terms of the policy, in terms of the conversation, but there's still a lot more work that needs to be done. Across the states, if I am not wrong, I think around 16 countries, 16 states have policies on menstrual equity, but and New York City was, I think, one of the first state and city to have a menstrual equity policy in the US. But still, we've seen that. I mean, we keep on reading the news articles. There's a lot of gaps in the implementation. So still, there is a policy, but there's a lot that need to do in terms of the implementation. So I think implementation is a big bit. Um, but of course, there's a whole lot of geography that does not even recognize this. So it's a huge mix.
Yeah. Can you explain for those who don't know what is this menstrual equity coalition that you mentioned?
Oh yeah. So menstrual equity coalition is basically it's like a group of a few state representatives, menstrual equity advocates, students, MPH students who are out of UMN, and people who basically gave the testimony, the students who gave the testimony for the bill, who a lot of these nonprofit organizations across Minnesota who work on menstrual equity and reproductive rights, they are part of this coalition. And this coalition basically meets every week oh, sorry, every month to discuss what will there be agenda for the next month or what they'll be doing for this quarter. So I think a lot of conversations have been specifically on the completing the toolkit that will come out for public schools, but also looking at the monitoring and evaluation framework. So I think the coalition, the two girls again who I've been talking about, they've been working to develop a survey. The survey was pushed out across schools, and I think we've have around 230 something responses to that survey, and we've basically trickled down analyzing that data, whatever we've received in terms of how many schools have received the money. So it's kind of a working group, I'll say, of people who are passionate about this issue, who really wants to solve the problem and are kind of active allies in this work.
Mhm. So I have a few other questions coming, and one of them is now that you have some success in creating a market, are there companies trying to enter the markets you have created and selling products or making them available?
Are you talking about my organization?
Yeah, well, other organizations than yours.
Yeah. So yes, so see, ours is completely not for profit, so we are not in market at all. I would just clarify that because we directly work either with governments or local representatives who fund our work, and we deliver the product in schools or wherever it's required. So it's completely not for profit. Nobody in the organization draws any penny of a salary. We all do this for pure social work. And we have our own jobs too, kind of, where we, bring living. But in terms of this market, it's a huge market of menstrual equity. A lot of new products have come up in the past. They've been disrupting supply chains. There are new innovations in terms of the quality of products that are coming up, whether it is in terms of the reusable pads that have come up. So there are few organizations who've been constantly working, renovating bringing in new innovations in their product, and coming up with new and better sanitary pads. So it could be a reusable sanitary pad, which is made out of, let's say, banana fiber, or it's like a cloth pad, which is a really good cloth with innovation which can be used for up to 5 years. There's a menstrual cup that I've worked on, which is just a $3 menstrual cup. You can use it for 7 years. It's just $3, and it's a medical grade silicone. Um, it's a huge market, and then there is a big influence of tech as well. There are a lot of these, companies. I mean, if you just look at your Apple phones, or your Android phones, there are a lot of these applications that you download to kind of track your periods. There are all these period trackers that are available. But this is like the first intervention that is there on tech. But there'll be a lot more interventions that we'll see in the coming months.
Mhm. We have more questions here. Um, First one is, what about books or movies like Are You There? It's Me, Margaret. Also, why pads instead of tampons? This attendee is apologizing because she didn't see the movie. But do you do you know about this?
Can you repeat the first part of the question?
Part of the question that she's asking is, what about books or movies like Are You There? It's Me, Margaret. Do you know
I
about this?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know about it.
Yeah, I know. I heard something, but I didn't read, so
Right.
I can't say. But she's also asking why pads instead of tampons.
Ah, that's actually a very difficult question to answer. Um, I mean, see, there is a platter of options at this point in terms of menstrual products, and I would not recommend to use a specific kind of product for all geographies. I think it varies with geography, what is most comfortable. The first idea intervention is one needs to have access to products. And then we look at the kind of product that is available in the market and what you have to give. So it shouldn't be a conversation of wire pads and not tampons, but I think there's a lot of depends on the quality of tampons. So there was the recent research that came out on tampons where they have seen like high intensity of arsenic. There was a recent research. I am forgetting the name of the academic, but if you just Google it, you'll find it. And that's what there was a bill in this budget session, in this legislative session by Senator Julie Coleman and Senator Erin McQuaid. I was helping Erin McQuaid. So they worked on a bill to ensure that any kind of tampons that are coming from market or in the market are, proofread very well, quality checked so that, if it's an arsenic, if there's a high level of these chemicals, it will cause more harm or damage than, benefit the product. So I think there's still a lot of conversations around that. Pads have been there for ages, tried, tested, used very well globally, and there's constantly new innovation that are coming up in pads. So maybe use there are a lot of new options. There are biodegradable pads. There are even plastic pads, which I won't recommend at all, because it brings UTI, all these rashes and all other problems. So yeah, I think it's just it one, you need to be careful of what kind of product that you're using. Read about certain products that are available in the market. I mean, I don't menstruate, but I have people, my friends, one of the best products that are available in the market is, I think, a menstrual cup, which I have also worked on to develop one to provide like a most affordable one. In the US, it's available for approximately $50, $40, sometimes $12, $14 on Amazon. But that happens to be a comfortable, good sustainable product that can be used for up to 7 years, 6 years. You just need to have like clean wash facilities. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Somebody's mentioning the religious limitations that support the use of pads and not tampons, in addition to health issues. And I would add, I grew up where this was the menstrual products were widely available, but there are two caveats. One is the fact that you need to have financial conditions, which has been the problem that you have talked
Right.
about the entire career, and also there is a bit of a bit big taboo surrounding the use of tampons, and I grew up around this taboo. I think that the most important thing that we should not lose focus is the fact that you need to give to girls and women the access of these
True.
products, no matter what, and they will make choices. They should also have a choice and see what works best for themselves. So
Absolutely.
that should not be the issue, but the issue should be, why do they not have access? We are in 2025.
Right. I think completely second that. And just wanted to add one quick point. The cultural element is really big in most countries because, like, virginity is still a construct, and anything to do with insertion is directly tied up with, how your hymen will look like, if you are unmarried. So
Yep.
if you talk about third world countries, I mean, that's not the right term to use, but if you talk about a lot of countries who are in low middle income group, um, you will realize that this is a big stereotype and a cultural problem, which kind of restricts them to use a lot of the products that have anything to do with insertion, and they rely a lot on pads that are available.
Yeah. So how do you see that men and boys are responding to education on menstrual process? Do you see a change?
I think there's a big change, but there is still a lot that needs to be done. And what needs to be done is intervention at the school level, intervention at an early childhood, where when you are at the age of 10, 11, when you are grooming, informing girls, people who menstruate um, in schools, it's important to have a simultaneous conversation with boys as well, where they grow up with certain kind of empathy, they grow up with certain kind of understanding of what's happening with people around them biologically, because you read about puberty, but you read certain aspects of puberty when you are as a boy. Like, I did not know anything, I didn't know about any of this until I was 17, and I started reading on my own because of a lot of things that intrigued at my place in my home. um, so education is a big barrier. It's very important on how do we bring all this through education to both boys and girls, so they are hand in hand, they know what's happening with their bodies.
Did you see changes in
There is
places
a big
that,
change. Yes, sorry
for
if I did.
example, yeah, you just mentioned that you saw this issue inside of your home with the ladies in your house, the family members. What did you see in your house, and what did you see in the places where you have been?
Oh, yeah, yeah, of course. Sorry if I missed that point because there's a huge change. We've been working with around 1,500 schools now where we've started the curriculum, and it's been close to 18 months since we've been implementing this particular curriculum, and we've seen a huge change where we did a baseline before 18 months, and we saw that there was almost no understanding of what menstruation is, or period is, or periods are. Um, to a point where we've seen boys being empathetic towards girls or people around them to understand what this is. I'll give you a very, very fine example. We have another project called Alvida Patriarchy, which I founded like 7 years back again. So Alvida is like a Urdu word to bye bye. So it means bye bye patriarchy. So the idea is on how do we engage young fathers on the conversation of misogyny, patriarchy in a subtle way, and not directly targeting men and boys, which is never the idea. So one of the projects under this particular program is we have of how do we engage, bring in young fathers and their daughters or girls in the community together to do hand in hand understanding of what menstrual health is. So there was a point when they were not exactly being able to say the word menstruation, to a point 12 months later where we've seen both boys, both young, those fathers and the daughters have been sewing the cloth pads together, to the fathers taking the ownership of buying a period product for their daughters or partners. So we've seen a huge difference, but education is the element which goes really long way. This needs to be put in at the age of 10, 11, where the girls are learning, where the boys are learning, and it just goes long way.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with you, and I would reflect and argue that it's education plus uh, making them affordable to everybody. If you go to a supermarket right now, you will have
Yes.
the material, but they are not affordable. They are very expensive. And if you're going to pay for $7 for a packet, and you need to choose between that and feed your kids for the day,
Absolutely.
it's a very sad choice to make because you should be able to do both. And I argue the fact that the governments didn't have the excellent idea to make this tax-free for everybody and just make this affordable for any women and girl.
Absolutely. No, I completely, second that again, your opinion on that, because pink tax is something that we've seen that has been coming up over these, decades, where it's specifically on, products used on by females, women, but specifically on feminine hygiene products. We've seen there's a huge pink tax that has been there all around the globe. India removed it a few years back, and we've seen the cost of products, which was $2 to, let's say, 50 cents, which has really helped in ensuring that people have access, and the access has increased across India, that we've seen in the past
Mhm.
6 7 years since this got moved. So yeah, I think it's very important to bring in affordability and tax-free products.
Exactly. Well, going back to the film a bit. So you have told me you became the ambassador of the movie which by the way is an Oscar-winning movie from a couple of years ago.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Ah, so that's an interesting one. I've been working in the space. And the thing is that there are not a lot of male allies kind of in this program when we look at in the specifically in the engagement of gender equity and also in menstrual equity. So always intrigued about the movie when it came out, and then when it won the academies. So I kind of did a screening where I was based. I was based in India, Mumbai. I did a huge screening and I that sent it to some team members, and then they had their own program or for like an ambassador program. And yeah, I kind of became an ambassador with the PAT project that they had, and I've been just showcasing, screening this movie wherever I go.
That's a wonderful thing. Well, I think we are getting in the end of our event here. Um, I don't know if you wanted me to ask anything that I didn't, I will give you the opportunity.
Oh, no, no, not at all. I mean, I don't have any questions. In case you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask me.
Okay, well, then, on behalf of CGS Minnesota, I want to thank you, all the attendees, for coming to this event. If anybody wants to watch again, the recording of this discussion can be found in our website and our YouTube channel. CGS Minnesota hosts events every month. Please check our website for updates. Also, go to our past events for the past recordings. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at cgsmn.contact@gmail.com. On behalf of CGS Minnesota, we extend our sincere thanks to Aashraya Seth for your enlightening and deeply impactful presentation on the ongoing global challenges surrounding menstrual health. Even in 2025, this remains a critical issue, and your insights today were both timely and invaluable. As we reflect on what we have learned, we are reminded that if somewhere a sister is lacking health products, hygiene, or information, we are all poor for it. We are all responsible for supporting change. So we are truly grateful for your time, your expertise, and your commitment to this vital work. Please, Aashraya, do keep in touch. I know that we will, and try to find more ways to collaborate even when you're far away. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you, especially you, Aashraya, for being here. It's a truly pleasure to host you and to hear you again.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. Thank you very much, Katya. It was lovely to be here. Just one call to action before we close this. Please donate peer products to people who are unhoused. If you see that they cannot afford it, please give them peer products. It's important. It goes a long way because when they're going to the market, they see they have $10, they'll prefer food over a product.
Yeah.
And then, if they're not using a product, it just becomes another public health crisis. Sorry. So please do that. Sorry. And keep volunteering, keep supporting local causes that work in this issue. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Take care.